If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
This is The Edge.
The advantage it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Hi, this is Mark, and welcome. What a great episode with Kevin Pollak. You know, Kevin's got a new series on Amazon called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and it got incredible reviews. It's got a New York Times write-up. It's got huge feedback that's positive on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, the score is in the 90s, like mid to high 90s. It's insane. And I saw it, and I enjoyed it very much. I saw the pilot episode. So anyway, he'll tell us a little something about that. He also uncorks a Kevin Spacey story that will blow your mind, and it's never been anywhere publicly. Kevin also has stories about Johnny Carson and Michael Clarke Duncan. He has a pretty... Look, I love Kevin Pollak, but, you know, by any yardstick, very entertaining, terrific stories to come in this episode. J. Elvis Weinstein, Josh, joins me, and if you'll permit me, I will mention again to you, it's the holiday season. If you're doing any Amazon shopping, please do it through our website, edge-show.com. Same Amazon as you would normally get, but we get a little piece of whatever you spend. We can't see what you spend or what you buy, but we just get a little small percentage of whatever you would normally spend, and as a result, you can support us. I've said before, and I will say it to you again, we'll never do commercials on this show. I thank you for letting me beg at the beginning of these shows, and every dollar stays with the show. No one puts a dime in their pocket. It's an effort just to cover our costs. For those wondering about the Fast 15 and Michael Shore, he is in Alabama covering the Roy Moore campaign. We will get him back on the show when he returns next week. Now, let's get started. Without delay, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Pollak.
Please be seated.
All right.
Thank you.
That's enough.
Should we wait? Wow, that died off quicker than I thought it would. Huh.
Not like real life.
Yes, not at all.
Kevin Pollak, welcome. I'm also here with J. Elvis Weinstein.
Hello.
Josh, you should know Kevin Pollak as a documentary filmmaker. Well, first of all, let me just say, Kevin, of course, actor, comedian, director, producer.
When do you think you stop at the qualifier of just, of course? Kevin, of course.
You're right.
No. I'm curious. I'm curious where, because if you had Scorsese here, you would just say, ladies and gentlemen, Martin Scorsese. So I wonder at what point... Not that I'm...
Could you get a Scorsese?
Yeah, I could try.
Scorsese?
There's a chasm between myself and Marty, but I am allowed to call him that to his face.
Because you did do Casino.
Correct. Continue, small juice for 400. But I asked only because as I was listening to you, who I've known since the beginning of time, describe how people might know me, I thought, when do I just get, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Pollak?
You're right. I probably should have just... But I'll tell you why I did.
It's not a critique.
Well,
it's a genuine
it's
question.
hard to know which obsequious path to take.
yeah.
I'll tell you why I mentioned the list, because I was going to pivot
Here we go.
off of documentary filmmaker to our own documentary filmmaker, J. Elvis Weinstein, whose film released today.
Where?
Yes.
Where?
iTunes, Amazon, Google, pay-per-view.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about it.
It's called I Need You to Kill. It's about stand-up in Asia.
Wow.
Yeah. I went on a tour with 3 American comics to Singapore and Hong Kong and Macau, and then explored these scenes that are popping up in these places over there.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I'm instantly curious.
Yeah, cool. I thought Kevin would like to hear about this because with a stand-up background.
Made a great stand-up doc himself.
Yeah, and right. Kevin's was about the through line with comedians. Very high.
Do you have to be miserable to be funny?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That sense that there's a suffering among those people who have really been successful in humor.
It's also, I think, a lot of people's assumption at this point that there's sadness behind the clown.
But that's not always the case.
Oh, no. Myself.
No, sometimes it's rage.
That's right. Most times it's rage. Because I was raised, I don't know, in such a bucolic, supporting, loving home, I didn't develop these phobias and insecurities, and also for some inexplicable reason, I was maybe annoyingly confident at such an early age. I mean, I went from precocious to cocky in about a minute, and then spent a little time at Arrogant, and then but I'm 12, by the way, when that happens. You know what I mean? It was just a weird. If I were played sports, I would have been considered a phenom.
Right.
Because what 10-year-old has comedic chops, really?
Right. I started at 15 doing stand-up.
There you go.
Yeah. And I had the same sort of happy, comedy-loving household that I grew up in.
Right. My mom caught me standing in front of the stereo hi-fi, the 7-foot-wide piece of furniture that music and comedy albums came through. Let's compare that to it was the Nano. Now it would be just your phone. Kids, we used to have to sit in front of furniture to listen to things. And what would you think if you came home and saw kids sitting in front of the furniture now?
Well, now the equivalent is when they're gaming, like video games being played, right? You have to gather around for that.
Well, you've actually nailed it, because what I was doing was there was no interactive options. We had just invented fire. So my option was to stand in front of the stereo when no one was around and lip sync. I didn't know what lip syncing was, nor did I think I had invented it. It was just playing.
Right.
I listened to this comedy album over and over and over again. I wish that they had put in the liner notes, "This gentleman is a serial rapist," because it was Cosby's first album.
Was it Bill Cosby's a very funny fellow, right?
Yes,
that
it was.
My
Noah and the
riveter
Ark
too.
was an act. I lip synced Noah and the Ark.
What's a cubit?
Sure. From age 10 to 16, all through middle school into high school. That was my act, and it was... Well, again, this precocious little Jewish kid lip-syncing Bill Cosby was ridiculous.
Cut to you on these shows like The Tonight Show, and I remember even saying to you, I
think it's more of a dissolve, by the way. I don't think it's a
well, you guys, I leave it to you guys.
Filmmaker.
I remember even saying to you, I don't know how you got this divine confidence, like when you're on, and
Remember Marty Cohen, the comedian in the Bay Area?
Sure.
He was like a mentor when I got there at age 20. And one of the first things he said after seeing my act was, when your material catches up with your stage presence, you're really going to be something. Yeah, I don't know. It's inexplicable. I won't begin to try to figure out where it came from.
But let me just ask one thing, and then I want to go back. When you get on a show like The Tonight Show with a Carson, so in other words, an intimidating environment, or on stage in front of many, many people, although I sense that wasn't as intimidating maybe as The Tonight Show potentially. Knowing all the implications of doing well on The Tonight Show, do you have to get into a cocky character, or do you literally have that all the time?
I wish I were that gifted as an actor. I would stand behind that curtain next to the famed, infamous segment producer, gatekeeper to stand-ups, Jim McCauley. And even though I only did the show going straight to the couch, I never did stand-up on The Tonight Show.
How did that happen? How did you circumvent the other?
Oh, really? I haven't told you this.
I don't think so, no.
Oh, buddy boy. This is so finish that thought.
Yeah,
so
sorry,
I would
ahead,
stand, because I do want to tell you that story. I would stand behind that curtain, and instead of being nervous or going through what could go wrong or the amount of importance, I felt like a 6-year-old on Christmas morning with excitement, with just sheer enthusiasm and excitement. I can't wait to get out there. There was never a thought of, what if I fuck this up? Ever. Not once. Wasn't even an option. And also there wasn't a overcompensating. It wasn't don't think about that. It never even popped into my mind that something might go wrong. I was like, that ridiculous.
That's a gift.
Well, it's a gift and a curse, because it's certainly naivete, right? It's ignorance is bliss kind of thing, in a certain way. So when I first moved to LA from San Francisco, I had already been befriended by made men, I'll say. Reiser, Seinfeld, Jay Leno, Gary Shandling, who had come through San Francisco, and I'd opened up for them, and they would each say, kid, when you get to the big time, let me know. So when I got here, I started hanging out at the Improv, and then eventually, when you fit in, each of those guys, when they went to do the Tonight Show as a stand-up, they would bring a little posse, I suppose, of other comedians, and I found myself in those groups. So I would go to the Tonight Show and hang out with the people I just mentioned in their dressing room, and they would run the shot, and 2 or 3 of us chimps would chime in, and or just be there to laugh, And it was kind of a ritual. It was a tradition, for sure. So I got to know Jim McCauley that way, as friends of these made men. And then I would see him around the Improv when he would go there to watch somebody's act. And so one night, I saw him there. Hey, Jim. Hey, Kevin. Who you here to see tonight? He said, well, I'm here to see, and then he said who it was, and I don't remember it. But I just heard he canceled. So I saw your name on the list, so I'm going to stick around. I think you might be ready to do the show.
Oh, nice.
And without having thought any of this through prior, I say the following. Wow. Well, you should know I've pretty much waited since the age of 10 for this conversation. I started watching Tonight Show at that age. I would collect comedians' names the way my friends collected baseball cards. But I'm such a fan of the show that over the years I sort of realized I would have a greater impact from the couch the way that Steve Martin and Don Rickles and Albert Brooks did. I said, he smiled and laughed like you did, and I said, I, of course, know you can't bring me to the couch. I'm enough of a fan to also know that, Jim. And I've been to the show many times. I know how it works. I guess what I'm saying is, it might be right for me to wait till I have a TV show or a movie out where you can justify bringing me to the couch. Because let's face it, I know Johnny loves Peter Falk. So when I sit down next to Johnny and do Peter Falk, he's going to lose his mind. And Jim said, well, I can't disagree with anything you've said. Do you have a TV show or a movie coming out soon? And I said, well, no. But what I was thinking was, I don't even have an agent. What do you mean, do I have a TV show or a movie? I don't even have auditions lined up. I just know the way the show works.
I am a chutzpah median.
Well, it's part chutzpah, but it's also fear-based in the sense that I knew I would do way better sitting on that couch than I would doing stand-up. I would do my impressions standing on the star in the middle of the stage, and people would laugh and applaud. And I knew enough about impressions being a parlor trick, and you basically steal the affection people have for the actual person. If you can recreate them well enough. Right. And if the person's not there, that's also crucial.
And with Johnny, you get to teach him to do the impression, too.
Yeah, and also Johnny did impressions. Right. He did characters. And again, he loved Peter Falk. He had him on all the time. And I had taught myself to cross one eye, because Peter Falk had a glass eye from age 3, and he was very open about it.
And that is not an impression that many people do. Like, you can say...
At that point.
Right.
At that point, no. So when Jim said, do you have a TV show or movie coming out? I said, no. And I may call you back 6 hours from now, Jim, and say, yes, I'll do the show whenever you can fit me in. But I think this would be a greater impact for me and ultimately better for the show. And he said, again, I can't argue with you. Let's see how long you can wait. It's not bad for us. You're just going to get better. I've seen you act enough to know you're not going to get worse. So let's see how long you can wait, It took over a year till I booked Willow, a Ron Howard movie, George Lucas producing. Yeah. And it was enough of a pedigree because of Ron Howard and George Lucas, even though the movie ultimately did just okay. But this is before a film comes out, so there's nothing but hope. And
that was you and Overton as the
Pixies?
Yeah,
Rick Overton and I were the two brownies. This way, no, this way.
And you are the comic relief in that movie, so
For
it's
sure.
kind of consistent with, being
Yeah,
a funny
the
guy.
parallel at the time was R2-D2 and the C-3PO, the two sidekicks who were bumbling and idiots. And just no robots. So I called Jim and told him the movie was coming out, and he said, great, let's find a date. And he said, "What? There's a pre-interview. Spoiler alert. What do you want Johnny to ask to set up the first thing?" And I said, "Just have him say, I understand you do impersonations, and I will hit him with the Peter Falk from nowhere." And I said, again, the night comes, standing behind the curtain, and next to Macaulay, who is the guy who opens the curtain.
Oh, that's
when
cool.
When
I
the
didn't know
person
that.
that he's booked walks through, and I hear the band playing. The band's winding down from a commercial. And I'm thinking to myself with nothing but sheer excitement, should I walk out and wave to Doc? All the people wave to Doc. That was what I was thinking.
This is great.
Yeah. And I thought, you don't know Doc. Don't be that asshole. Wave to Doc next time, if there is a next time. Don't wave to him the first time. You've never met him. What are you, an idiot? Just get to the damn desk and to Johnny. So I wind back from commercial, and I hear welcome back, folks. My next guest is an actor. He's got a new movie out, directed by Ron Howard, called Willow. I guess it's produced by George Lucas. They tell me he's also a stand-up comedian. We'll ask him about that. Please welcome Mr. Kevin Pollak. And I come out through the thing and wave to the audience, not to Doc. And I go right to the desk, and I sit down, and he says, Now, Kevin, we'll talk about Willow in just a second. Somebody told me that you do impressions. Is that right? And I crossed my eye. I threw an arm up in the air, the way that Columbo would, be acting confused, and I said, "Johnny, that's a bald-faced lie." Crossing the eye, right? And he he pushed himself away from the desk, clutching his chest. He was laughing that hard within 4 seconds. And I am convinced, and will go to my grave believing, that I was back on the show 2 or 3 times a year until he retired because of that Peter Falk moment. For sure. I mean, it was so apparent. And you remember those days. You know, we've been pals a long time. The best compliment you could get from an appearance like that was not, oh, hey, the Peter Falk thing went over great, or the William Shatner story was hilarious. The best compliment you could get was, Johnny really likes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the best one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was probably there's only one other near example, but that is the biggest by far example of taking the reins really of my future, but of how to do things that will best showcase what you can do, right? And I wish I had those balls to this day, because as you get older, it's easier to get along and go along and acquiesce at certain moments like that, right? But yeah, I think
it's hard to do what Kevin's talking about too, you know, Josh. That I just think of my own life. I think I default to, no, okay, I get it. So I'll come out, I'll just do my impressions. I have to hope that they make an impact, and then maybe Johnny will wave me over or
it's
whatever.
a chance of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't tell my friends that I had that conversation, and for fear that they would say, you're an asshole, call Jim McCauley right now and tell him you're going to do the show.
Right.
Who do you think you are? You were just offered an opportunity. In fact, all I was offered was a maybe, because what Jim, if you remember, said was, the guy fell out, I'm going to watch your act. I think you're ready for the show. He hadn't even said, would you like to be on the show? He just said, I think you're ready.
Yeah, here's my list of
and
demands.
I lay this at his feet. And I would see him again during that year, on and off, you know, going with somebody else or see him around the Improv. And we wouldn't talk about it. You know, he wouldn't say, so, you ready, kid? Or I wouldn't say, I'm getting there. We just left it alone.
And that in itself, I mean, like, you want to say, hey, you know, anytime, I'm around, but you don't want to seem
But there's something
anxious.
about certainty in show business.
Yes.
That people will, like, kind of, it's almost like a glowing orb.
Yeah,
when
it
someone
is.
has that much certainty. It's
Yes.
because people are like, whatever happens, it's not going to be my fault.
That's exactly right. They can point the finger away, which is ultimately why the quality of a lot of broadcast programming, certainly, they just kept adding water more and more and more and more and more, because no one wants to take the hit. They want to be able to point their finger and go, we had these elements. What are you talking about? Right.
What was the second? You said that there was also one other time maybe that.
Well, you know, Avalon was the first sort of real dramatic role I did, the Barry Levinson movie. And
That's a great movie.
although a lot of people didn't see it.
Just want to mention, you can still get it Netflix
I
or
would
wherever.
imagine. I would imagine,
I just think it's really worth a watch.
It has, and it hasn't lost its
It's a
step.
beautiful film.
Agreed. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Go ahead.
No, well, thank you. But, you know, at the time, Barry Levinson was formerly a comedian. Him and Craig T. Nelson were a comedy team. I don't know if you guys
I
know.
did not know that. I knew that he liked comedians in his stuff, but I never knew that he had a background himself.
I have to digress again. He told me a bit that he and Craig T. Nelson did. So they worked in the coffee houses of the 60s, right, as a stand-up duo.
And for Craig T. Nelson, the guy who played Coach later, is that?
Sure.
Just to give people
Father
an
and
idea.
Poltergeist.
Father and Poltergeist.
Parenthood. He's the patriarch.
Right. Anyway, go ahead.
Long storied career, but he and Barry Levinson were comedians at one point. And the new show that I'm on, that I can't wait to talk to you about, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, finds its way to the Village in New York in 1958 at a similar coffeehouse club called the Gaslight. So these places were around. It's where Lenny Bruce started. And in fact, he's a character in that TV show I mentioned. But in the Barry Levinson, Craig T. Nelson story, they were performing. There's a lot of acoustic duos, and they were just drips. And if you're a comedian, you did not have patience for acoustic duos talking about Stop the War.
What are acoustic duos?
So acoustic guitars. So two men or man and a woman playing acoustic guitars.
Folk comedy.
Folk.
Okay.
They were not even comedy. It was drippingly sincere folk songs about the Vietnam War, basically. Wow. And if you were a comedian, that's the last act you want to follow.
Right.
Oh, God, I got to go after these idiots. So they got so frustrated by these painfully sincere singer-songwriter acoustic guitar players that since the audience didn't know any act one from the other, no one was famous, Craig and Barry had themselves introduced with acoustic guitars as one of these duos, one of these painfully sincere singer-songwriters. Well, you just show up with acoustic guitars and people assume, until the Smothers Brothers showed up, people would always assume these guys are going to be painfully sincere, and I can't wait to care more. while listening to them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Barry and Craig. And they step up with their guitars. Thank you. We're Barry and Craig, and we'd like to sing you our first song, Someday. Ding, 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 ding. They would look at each other. They would tune the guitars. Ding, 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 ding. Look at each other. Nod. Face the microphones in the audience. Begin to play, and then stop, and then look back at each other. Ding, 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 ding. And they tuned up for 9 minutes.
Oh, my God.
They never actually played.
Yeah.
So, as enjoyable as that premise is, it's equally and then more enjoyable during the first 3 of the 9 minutes.
Sure.
Right.
It's the funniest thing you've ever seen. You can't believe these guys are still tuning up. The middle 3 minutes, however,
That's the danger.
we've driven past the joke. And now the audience wants to set them on fire.
Right. Sure.
They cannot believe. We get it. It was hilarious.
Right.
Please tell me you're going to do something else. Well, that went on for 3 minutes. And Barry told me that either he or Craig, it would vary, would invariably look at each other and with a look of, well, I got to bail. I can't stay in the pocket.
Right.
They really do want to kill us. But they knew in their minds, if we could just get to that last 3 minutes, the audience would weirdly come back around and start laughing again because they, again, couldn't believe that they were just tuning up. And Barry said, it was a 9-minute bit. It was never a 6-minute bit or a 4-minute bit. It's a 9-minute bit.
Unreal.
Yeah, truly.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So when I was cast in Avalon, so that was the other moment in time where I took the reins.
By the way, let me just say, it would seem like one of those things where you go, you got to see Kevin Pollak when he does his Peter Falk. You got to see Kevin Pollak when he talks about De Niro on the set or whatever. But once you've seen the tuning up thing, you wouldn't say, I got to go see that again.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
Yes.
But you
I've
might
seen
set
it.
up a friend to go see it.
Yeah. And back then, I don't know that they had repeat
I think
bits. I think they were writing something stupid every time to go on stage. The way Albert Brooks would use the Tonight Show as an open mic.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Right. He would write a whole new act or story or bit, really a little one-man sketch.
Right.
And that would be the only
do
time
it
you'd
once.
see it.
And do it once.
Yeah.
And had never done it before.
Anyway, go ahead. So,
So Barry had come to the Improv and seen comedians perform in the mid to late 80s, the casting people and filmmakers would come to the Improv, probably the Comedy Store too, but I never worked there, and see certain acts and see if they might be interested in casting them. It still happens to this day, I'm sure. So I had been called in to audition for Barry because of that in Good Morning Vietnam and maybe Tin Men. I'd been called in a couple times. So my agent calls and asks me, says, there's this movie that Barry Levins is doing called The Family, which is what Avalon was originally titled, The Family, and he'd like to see you for this part. And at that time, I was in the middle of shooting the series that Rob Reiner and Christopher Guest had created called Morton and Hayes. And, that was, in itself, I think it's a whole chapter in my book, which is technically still available, called How I Slept My Way to the Middle.
that's a great book, too.
That's a whole chapter about
Great
what
job.
I went through. Thank you, pal.
Great stories.
To get through the audition process to get Morton and Hayes. It was about a 1930s comedy team. So they really needed 2 people who had incredible timing and rhythm. I think they offered it originally, as my memory serves, to Penn and Teller, who passed. And then they had to create a comedy team, right? Because the premise was that Rob Reiner, playing himself, hi, I'm Rob Reiner. You know me from television and movies, but you may not know I've been a big fan of comedy teams of the 30s and 40s, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, and of course my favorite, Chick Morton and Eddie Hayes. Recently, while construction workers were tearing down a Foster freeze to make room for a dairy, or vice versa, they found old 2-reelers of Morton and Hayes, and we've dusted them off, and we're going to present one to you each week. Tonight's entitled Saps at Sea, and then he hits this projector, and it fills the camera lens with white light, and then this 2-reeler in black and white.
Yeah, it's black and white.
As if it were shot in the 30s, unfolds. And it was a summer series for CBS, 6 episodes. This is 19...
It was 92, I think, wasn't it?
Well, no, it had to have come out in 91 because 92 was A Few Good Men, which I got because I was in Rob's face every day on having lunch on Morton and Hayes.
I remember watching it at Jeff Cesario's house.
Oh, my
He
God.
had flown me out from Minneapolis to write a thing with him.
Oh, my God. Love Cesario.
I moved here a few months later.
In fact, Jeff and I would probably be in the dressing room of other comedians doing the Tonight Show.
Oh, sure.
I remember I would see Jeff all the time with Shandling. And
I was part of Jeff's posse.
Yep.
I was the following posse.
Yeah, well,
And Louis Anderson.
it probably lived to this day. So, I felt like I'm starring in this television show for Rob Reiner and Christopher Guest, not even realizing as I look back all these years later, that was an absurd moment in time of creative joy and luck. I don't think I was even aware of what a thoroughbred, iconic Mount Rushmore comedy giant Christopher Guest was and is. Rob Reiner was a brilliant filmmaker and certainly funny as hell as an actor. But I was starring in the show, and my agent says they want you to go read, and you're going to be put on tape for Barry. He's already location scouting in Baltimore. Well, kids out there, if you want to be actors, avoid the phrase "put on tape." It's almost, you have to get through it. The concept. You're not in the room with the person, and a lot nowadays people just put themselves on their iPhone and they shoot themselves auditioning. We just had. Do you watch Stranger Things?
First season.
So the high school popular kid who dates the girl. He's got the big hair.
Right.
Steve Harrington is the name of the character. So the actor's name is Joe Keery. We just had him on the chat show this last Sunday.
That's Kevin's podcast.
Yes, that's right. And that's how he got the part on Stranger Things, was to put himself on tape using his iPhone.
Wow.
And just sent that in.
That's a great fact.
So
you were saying at the time, being put on tape is like
you would go to a casting agent's office and they would
like
have
a dead offer almost.
Yeah, that's right. You're dead money, and you're being put on tape means the casting director's assistant probably is even there, not even the casting director. You go in and she or he will read the scene with you. The camera's on you. It only shows you.
It's always been about family.
That's right.
This family will eat together.
Yeah, and that horrible flat reading has actually been acted in films. You've seen what I'm talking about in movies. It's that ridiculous. So I got put on tape. I went back to work on Morton and Hayes, and I knew that I didn't do so well. In my mind, I thought, well, that didn't go very well. I'm not going to get that, because I was so caught up in Morton and Hayes and the excitement of Morton and Hayes, right? So Morton and Hayes finishes production a couple of weeks later, and now it's eating away at me. Man, I really tanked that Barry Levinson audition. That character was kind of perfect. Shit. So I contacted my then manager and asked him to see if I could get back in an audition for Barry. And the word goes to Barry, comes back from Barry to me, which is the following. Barry said he's in Baltimore location scouting. He said he hasn't cast the role yet. It starts in less than 2 weeks. He still likes you for the part, but he's in Baltimore, like I said, location scouting. So if you want to go to Baltimore and audition for him, he said you certainly are welcome to. So it may not sound like a big deal that I bought my own ticket and booked my own hotel and flew my ass to Baltimore to audition for someone that I still had a 1 in gazillion chance of getting. That may not sound like a big deal, but I promise you at the time, it was a situation where most people would have said, I'm not going to fucking fly myself to Baltimore for an audition? Right. At what expense? And auditions are a numbers game, a percentage, and you get less than 10%.
Sure.
I'd already auditioned for hundreds of things. I didn't have to fly myself to Baltimore for them. I could find out in West Hollywood that I was no good. Also, I really wasn't a trained actor, never have been. I mean, I learned on the set. There was no lessons. I was a comedian who thought he could act. Right. So I really had no reason to fly myself to Baltimore. But
and
I did.
This wasn't a comedy per se, this Avalon.
Oh, no. No,
so my point is, your chops that you had well established at that point. I mean, I would say, in other words,
were comedic though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in other words, you're not walking in with it's Kevin Pollak who's got this great body of dramatic work.
No, there's no body work and no even notion that I could do drama, quite frankly.
And what was driving? What was the flame? Was this career furtherment, or was this like, this is an acting challenge I can do?
The script was phenomenal.
Yeah,
and I worshipped Barry Levinson at that point. Diner kind of changed the canvas for comedians who thought they could act.
So it was Barry Levinson. I need to be in a Barry Levinson movie.
Absolutely.
Kind of. Okay.
And I had an extra couple $100.
Right.
That was probably it.
And he just made Tin Man. How could you not want to work with him?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what he had just made was Rain Man.
Oh, okay.
To bring you full circle. So I did. I flew there, and the scene was in the big warehouse, spoiler alert, of a movie from 1991 or 89.
But this is a big spoiler.
Yeah, I'm walking in our warehouse after it had burned down.
Exactly.
And so, because it's a big warehouse scene, when I get up to do the audition in Barry's 14 by 18 office, I stand as far away from him as I can, which is probably 3.5 feet, and I begin shouting as if I'm in this cavernous warehouse that ultimately is what happens in the movie. And I'm a sentence and a half in, and Barry says, No, hold on. What are you yelling for? He's from Baltimore. What are you yelling for? I said, well, in the script, the stage direction says, yeah, but I'm just here. I'm right here. So just, you talk to me. Well, what are we, 3 feet apart? So there's no reason to yell. Yeah, but don't you want to see what's going to happen in the scene? Yeah, just go ahead and read it. I'm right here. And what I was maybe being taught without him saying it or me asking, is this a lesson, was how about being in the moment? You're in my 14 by 18 office. Why don't you be a person? Stop acting.
Right.
Oh.
Which was so lucky for a guy who did not know how to act, right? What I could do, and do to this day, is be present.
Right.
That's what stand-up comedy had taught me, was to stand in front of an audience and be fearless and be present. And it's probably why I learned to be fearless during auditions, is that I was the guy who would go into the room and fuck with the people I was about to beg for a job. But I would still walk in and say, whose office is this? And one of them would raise their hand, and I'd say, we could probably make a call and get you a corner office, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to presume you'd want a corner office, but if you did, one of you must know who to call. And 30% of the time they would laugh.
Sure.
And 70% of the time they'd say, yeah, why don't we start?
Right.
No laughs. So
Were the numbers really like that?
I'm
like
sure.
70-30? Wow.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The other thing about Barry Levinson saying that to you, I think, is I'm sure there was an element of, can this comic take a note and make a big adjustment on the fly?
100%. Yeah. And also I learned while working with him, the next thing was my then manager also managed Paul Reiser. And Paul Reiser, my hero from seeing a comedian in Diner be that natural and funny, had done Aliens, which was very intense and dramatic. Whereas Diner was conversational, and any comedian could do that, I thought. So could I. But Aliens was very impressive what he did. So I asked our manager, hey, who did Paul work with somebody?
Oh.
Like an acting coach or something? This is after I get the part on Avalon. And he says, yeah. So I talked to the acting coach because I realize how important this opportunity is. The acting coach says, I need a copy of the script so I can work with you on this. So I go to Barry and say, I found this acting coach. I really want to do a great job for you. So I got this great acting coach. He worked with Paul Reiser, who you know from Diner, of course. And he's asked for a copy of the script. And Barry said, oh, no. Nope. You're not going to go work with some acting coach and you're going to do what he tells you. No. You're the guy, all right? You came in, you did the scene, you're the guy. Just be the guy. I don't need you to learn how to act. I don't even want to see you act. You didn't
even do a Baltimore accent as much as you're doing now
right.
in the movie.
No. So
Wow.
all the other actors in Avalon are brilliant stage actors, by the way. John Plowright, Henri Mueller-Stahl was the Laurence Olivier of German theater. Even my contemporaries and Elizabeth Perkins and Aidan Quinn both came from, I think, the Goodwin in Chicago. And everyone, the theater people, so they wanted to rehearse. And Barry, again, hating acting, said, no, just go to lunch. Go to lunch and get to know each other and hang out and be a family and don't worry about it,
Wow.
Which, again, all good for the comedian who doesn't know how to act.
Sure.
So the weird timing of that being the first dramatic role, that being the first big, potentially impactful acting for me, also for a writer-director who just won all these awards having done Rain Man, and this is his next movie, right? Was all and that director hates to see acting,
Right.
which I can't do. I mean, the whole thing was
Yeah, it was all leveling the playing field for you each time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I remember him saying he's ridiculously funny. He still always thinks like a comedian. And he said, the studio wants to test this movie we're making, Avalon, and I convinced them that they're not allowed to test it. I said, how did you convince a studio they can't market a film? Well, I brought him, our first meeting, I brought him a 3x5 card from the test screening of Rain Man. And someone had filled out the card. And they had written on the card, hey, why didn't the little guy just snap out of it? My favorite part is hey, comma.
Right.
So working with Barry. And I remember I had like a Letterman appearance, I think during the time. And while we were shooting, and Barry would just have these quips on the set, just sitting around waiting for the cinematographer, Alan Davio, who had done Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, brilliant, beautiful, astonishing Academy Award winner. But he would take 3 hours, and Barry would say, doesn't matter if he's lighting a football or a football stadium, it's 3 hours. Alan! But he would have these little quips on the set while we're waiting for Alan, and he would say, I think I might have figured out a way to save the Coca-Cola bottling company $5 million, maybe $500,000. I don't know. A lot of money. What are you talking about? Well, I'm in the grocery store with my son, Jack. He's 5. We're going down the aisle, and Jack says, hey, Dad, I want some Diet Coke. I said, what do you mean you want Diet Coke? You're 5, Jack. Have some Coke. He says, no, I want to have Diet Coke. I said, well, all right, why do you want Diet Coke? And he said, because it's less than 1 calorie. And he had just found this phrase that he'd hooked onto that he loved. It's less than 1 calorie. And I thought, the truth of the matter is, as a consumer, you could just put 1 calorie. So the amount of paint that they would save by not having to print less than, I think I'd save them a couple, maybe $1 billion. I don't know. That's a lot of paint. So I would yell at him, let me do that bit on Letterman. I'm on Letterman in 5 days. And he didn't care. He didn't care that he was coming up with these gems and just dropping them. Remember when someone landed a Cessna in Red Square?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right? Broken through all the radars. No one saw the Cessna coming. So Barry said, I think I may have figured. He was always trying to save people money. I think I may have figured out a way to save the military billions of dollars. What's that? They got the new stealth plane. Can't see it, right? So you can't see it. So the idea is it could fly into enemy territory. Well, this guy just landed a Cessna in Red Square. So I'd say with the money it cost him, one of these stealth planes cost like half $500 million to build. You could make 1 million Cessnas with that money, right? Something like that.
Right.
What do they cost? A couple million each? And I'm just on the floor howling, and he's just riffing.
Right.
All this great material is going nowhere, and it's making me insane. I'm losing my mind. That was the other time that I grabbed the reins and thought, fly yourself to Baltimore, you idiot.
Kevin, on your show, the Kevin Pollak Chat Show, you take the guest through what is almost a granular visit through their life. Like you have this dossier.
I think from reading autobiographies, I've been always very, very interested in people's journeys because none of ours are the same.
Right.
Literally, the wildly overused word. We're all snowflakes. So I don't know, there's something, because everyone's fresh and different and weird, and how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, it's true. We have limited time. Otherwise, I would, maybe skip along with some, because you've written the book, and you've done the movie with Scorsese, and you've done all of these different projects, and so it's tough to know, where to stop. For some of the great stories on that, I would direct people to the book, because the book's really got the great story. And by the way, the last time you were here, you told a great story about meeting Robert De Niro at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So
Is this about you wanting me to show you on the microphone stand where Kevin Spacey touched me?
You did do The Usual Suspects with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. My friend Gabriel Burns is just now being quoted in the press as sharing stories. But I think he just, from what I've read, he's just saying that production was halted one day on the set from an incident. That's what I've...
Oh.
People are starting to text me links.
Gabriel Burns in my other documentary, he's a great guy.
Love Gabriel. Yeah, we had... It is a story I've never told. And I wrote in my book, there's another, because I wrote a lot about The Usual Suspects, of course, how when I first met Stephen Baldwin, he was wearing leather pants. I should qualify, he had not arrived on a motorcycle or a horse. He was just wearing leather pants. And I said, "Oh, Stephen, your brother stole your food at every meal, didn't they?" So I told a lot of stories, but then I finished it by saying there's one more story that I've been asked by my publisher not to tell you. But if you see me at a bar and you buy me the right amount of drinks, I will tell you. And this story I told my publishers, and they said, you don't want to be the first one to tell this story, because this was, what's the book now, 7, 8 years old? And 7, 8 years ago, Kevin was so far in the closet, as he was his entire life, that my publisher was basically saying, do you want to be the guy who outs a homosexual? I don't think you want to be that guy. Yeah. Even though the reason that hadn't crossed my mind, because the story was about Kevin actually being Kaiser Soze, just a heinous, the devil, just a horrible, maybe the worst betrayal I've ever witnessed in all the film sets, all the experiences I've had. I've done a number of films. I don't know the exact number, 82, but I will say that 6 of them are quite good.
But let me just stop for a second. Holy shit, 82 films?
I think so, and I only know because IMDb keeps yelling. And people will say, it says on your IMDb thing that you've done 140 movies. And no, they factor in everything. That total number you're looking at is every Tonight Show appearance, everything I've ever done. But
so what happened on The Usual Suspects?
You want me to break this on your
Please.
show?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so a little backstory is necessary.
Yeah.
The screenplay for The Usual Suspects that went on to win the Academy Award.
Chris McQuarrie, was it?
Chris McQuarrie. I mentioned it went on to win the Academy Award to qualify the fact that when we, the cast, read the script, we all agreed when spoken about it to each other, it's the best script we've ever read. Very important to know that when people say, when you're working on a movie like that, do you know it's going to be what it ends up being? Of course not. It's impossible. All we did know was this script is...
This is ours to fuck up.
By page 5, this is ours to fuck up, because it's... And in some ways, the script was better than the film. It was that, as a read, it was that remarkable. Took your breath away. So know that as backstory. And also know that the gentleman who wrote it, Chris McQuarrie, was 25. Brian Singer, his friend since middle school in New Jersey, also 25. These two 25-year-olds ran into Kevin Spacey at Sundance and said, we've written this script because they broke the story together, and Brian was going to direct it, and Chris actually wrote it. We've got the script. We're going to do this movie, Kevin. We would love you as this character, and they pitch him the character. And this is 1993, 94. We shot in 94. You know, Kevin, you have to go back in time, was a character actor like myself who had done supporting roles. He hadn't done the lead in the film. When Usual Suspects came out in 95, Swimming with Sharks also came out, and those two films combined, and then him winning the Academy Award, launched what we now know. But in 1994, he was a character actor that was not terribly well known unless you were a cinephile, really. You had to be dialed into character actors as a hobby. So the fact that they approached him and said, we have this role for you, even though they were 25-year-old pitchers who didn't know shit from Shinola, he said, well, let me read it. And he read it and said, this is great. Good luck getting the money. So they went out to get the money.
And I bet he said it super snotty
Yep,
like that, too.
Of course. 28 different financiers, as the story was told to me. Some of these facts are reported to me, and so if they're wrong, I blame others. 28 different financiers said no to the screenplay that went on to win the Academy Award, 6 of which said, we'll make it, but not with Kevin Spacey. And they had their own list. And as a director in films now, I can tell you that happens every time you get a movie financed. They have lists so they can justify the money they're spending because they have to have pre-sales, foreign sales, and so on. And the list changes every day, and there are algorithms that you just feed the name into the computer, and it tells you what their value is in every market around the world.
God, that's wild.
It's really unfortunate, too, because it's at times no rhyme, no reason. Like, really, that person is worth this amount, and you're telling me this person isn't?
And
Plus
especially in a time when, like, almost nobody can open a movie anymore. There's
Well,
almost no name that will truly open a movie, at least in the United States.
The truth is, at any given time throughout the history of cinema, there's only been a handful of people at any given time. And the fact that someone like Burt Reynolds had a 10-year run.
Right.
And the reason Tom Cruise, for example, is bankable is even though a movie may misfire here, it's still going to make hundreds of millions around the world. It's unstoppable. Movies that we would look at and go, well, that movie tanked.
Right.
Nope. The Mummy made $400 million worldwide.
Sure.
At any rate, so...
By the way, last thing on that, it also denies whatever art there is associated with movie making and with scripts, and there's a creative magic to it. And it
Right.
really...
Well, and casting is one of those elements.
Yes, but I'm saying it prevents you from making
Right.
the casting decisions that you want.
No,
And
I
what
agree.
brings the story back is casting, because Bryan Singer and Chris McQuarrie both decided they would pass on these financial offers to make their movie as first-time filmmakers at age 25 and hold out till they could find a financier that would let Kevin star in the movie.
That's the same confidence that got you on the Tonight Show, though. It's that same age and that same, like, no, we know, we're good.
Right, right. But think about what it means to get your first film funded. And I myself, now casting a movie to direct, I make sure I have a list of several names, because if I hold on too dearly, too tightly to one, and I can't get funding for that one, I'm only going to break my own heart out of stupidity and
It's like falling in love with temp music.
right. It's exactly that. So this is all very important to know what Bryan and Kevin held out for. And Kevin knew that they held out for him. He was very well aware of that. Kevin also knew that Bryan Singer was gay, because Bryan Singer was very open about being gay. In fact, on the set of the shooting Usual Suspects, he had an 18-year-old boyfriend in from Paris, Frederic, who was like the mascot on the set. Everyone loved Frederic. Kevin Spacey, on the other hand, was such a closeted homosexual that, since none of us knew him, none of us in the cast, when we would sit around having lunch and he would say, my girlfriend in New York this, my girlfriend in New York that, if you don't know anyone, there's no reason to question that, right? And he had the demeanor and personality was such that there was no reason, again, to even wonder. It never even crossed your mind. Not that it would ever matter. I'm just letting you know sort of what the conversations were on the set.
Sure, and it mattered to him clearly because he was putting it out there. Right.
And has been all these years.
My girlfriend at camp.
Yeah, right. And he was, always been great at doing impersonations, so we would kid around. He and I teaching Gabriel Byrne how to do Johnny Carson was one of my favorite memories, because Gabriel gets so fucking frustrated. Show me again. Fuck. Come on. How does he do it? Now, Gabriel will be right back. Ah, fuck. All right, let me try. We'll be right. Ah, fuck, I can't do it. So much fun. So it's really important to know that Bryan Singer was very openly gay. Kevin Spacey was very closeted. No one even thought it was a thing. It crossed no one's mind. But Kevin and Bryan talked about it. Bryan knew that Kevin was gay. Kevin had come out to Bryan. They had conversations about it. It bonded them. All of that backstory, I promise you, unbelievably important to the following, which is the actual occurrence. 3 days left of shooting. It's a night shoot. I get out of my car, having arrived. I'm walking to my trailer. I see Gabriel Byrne, and he says, in his very typical dramatic Irish way, "Have you heard what's happened?" No, man, I just got to set. Come to my trailer. Oh, jeez. All right. So I go to Gabriel's trailer. We sit down, and he starts the story with my favorite word of the entire story. Apparently. Every night after work, Bryan goes to say goodnight to Kevin. He knocks on his door and says, "Great work, great day," whatever the fuck they say to each other. And then, it's just a ritual sort of thing that they do. So last night when Bryan went to Kevin's trailer to knock on it and say great work, and he knocks and walks in. And when he walked in, Kevin was having his way with Frederic. And Bryan flipped out, and Frederic's on a plane back to Paris already this morning. And Bryan and Kevin are not talking to each other. Bryan won't even look at him. We're all fucked. We're fucked. Did you hear me? Everything we've done on this great fucking movie, it'll never see the light of day. I mean, I can't imagine that Bryan's going to go back to fucking editing. He's going to assassinate the son of a bitch, right? And the whole fucking movie's pending on this performance. We're fucked. Do you understand that?
Wow.
And so if I have to put this in heterosexual terms for your audience to wrap their brains around it, because it is a level of heinous betrayal. Again, the director has an 18-year-old girlfriend who he's crazy in love with. And The director's only 25, by the way. I know Brian has his own issues and lawsuits and problems right now with younger
But at that time,
fellas.
it was certainly appropriate to be
But Brian
25.
himself was 25.
Right.
So the fact that he was with an 18-year-old wasn't, that too hadn't crossed anyone's mind. But he was in love, and he was open about it. So, and then Kevin knew that they had held out for him to make the movie. And also, having his way with Frederic wasn't about being horny. That's just a heinous power move.
Absolutely a power thing.
I'm going to have my way with the director's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And because I can. All of that is, and clearly Frederic is, it's as guilty of betraying Brian, this 18-year-old. Right. However he was seduced, doesn't really matter. It's just for Kevin to do that to his director, who he had gone
and to the movie,
to all of us.
It's a level of betrayal that's
It's a level
awful.
of betrayal I've not seen
Yeah.
before or since. And it doesn't compare to the accusations being made these days towards either of them, quite frankly. But in that moment in time, in 1994, when one was 25 and the other was basically a barely known character actor, this was devastating. And sure enough, Brian would not talk to Kevin the rest of the shoot. Kevin got his direction from the first or second AD, I don't remember which. And we were all sort of led to think, what's going to happen when Brian gets to editing and has to look at Kevin's face every day, all day, and try to and has to cut and edit the performance that went on to win the Academy Award.
That's mostly in single.
That's mostly in single, and you're looking at take after take after take after take after take. How many days does it take to before you can start to get out of your mind the visual of knocking on that trailer door and walking in and seeing that? To Brian's credit, obviously, he went back and edited a masterful film.
No, it speaks so well of him.
Yep.
Creatively.
As a filmmaker, sure.
Yeah, creatively, exactly. But boy, it does tell the story of Kevin Spacey. In that, I mean, he's ready. You see honestly, I'll just say it, like a dark soul would do something like that.
Extremely dark soul. And it's interesting, I've never told the story, and then once I reached the end of the story, comparable to the heinous crimes Kevin for sure has been accused of now, and more is coming out against Brian. This story is very tame.
Right, but
it
it's
just
still
speaks
predatorial.
to betrayal,
right.
Certainly predatorial, but it speaks to power and betrayal, which is behind all these powerful men thinking that they are not subjected to the same rules and governing bodies as the rest of us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And even in his apology of his most recent stuff, remember his first apology was,
I came out.
I came out. Right.
Which I was thrilled that the gay community said, fuck you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've been fighting pedophilia our whole lives.
Sure.
We get lumped in together. This is why the right side of politics, every time they want to put us down, they lump in the P word. You idiot. You're
No.
just a heinous fucking guy from beginning to end. So he was a guy that everyone kind of knew and sort of started to hear more and more stories back in 1994. Oh yeah, this was a guy who worked his way into many places, either offering himself up on the casting couch or doing the predatory advances. Again, this is hearsay, as I'm explaining that part to you, but those things started to come out. What wasn't coming out was federal offenses that he's now been accused of. So when people hear anyone like me or Gabriel tell of a story, it can come off as we were complicit.
I don't think that there was a crime in that. There was a very large breach
Right.
of protocol on that set.
Exactly.
And a very large breach of decency.
But even if you knew that was going on, I think Kevin's point is, so we'd heard that he was knocking around, sleeping his way to wherever. Whether or not that was true, that was just out there in the zeitgeist.
Right.
But there's those are consenting adults doing that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so there's no...
Yeah, no, it's still, I think, for you to walk away telling that story, it's still in the realm of gossip in a lot of ways.
Sure. Sure, which is one of the reasons. Then again, I understood why my publisher said you don't want to out
Not then you didn't.
Kevin Spacey if he's choosing to live his life in the closet and all that means. Because I wanted to tell the story because, again, before any of these allegations, it was the most heinous thing I'd heard an actor do to a director. I'm sure worse things
You
are
would
out
have gotten
there.
hammered for outing him, though.
For sure.
And lost in that would have been the actual
Absolutely. You would have been.
I would
you
have
would
been
have
the
been what he
villain.
did.
I would have been the perpetrator of a heinous crime.
Right.
Yeah. So good on you to hang on to it.
Good on your publisher for talking.
Yes. But there was another incident where Michael Clarke Duncan, I told a story about him in the book, a very funny story that involves him being a little nutty, cuckoo go nuts. And 5 weeks before the book came out, he died. Michael Clarke Duncan passed away, and my publisher called and said, I don't know if you saw the news today, but Michael Clarke Duncan just passed, and your story about him is not the brightest light shown. So do you want us to keep the story in? And I thought for 4 seconds and said, you don't get a pass for dying. He's beloved.
Of course.
He's beloved then and to this day.
He could take a hit because
I have witnesses. I mean, the story.
I forget what. Yeah, please, because I don't. It's funny how I read the book and I guess it was a while ago. I remember certain things, but I
there
don't
are
remember
also
this at all.
7,000 stories in the book.
Yeah.
I can't remember them all. The name of the chapter was Per Diem. Whole 9 yards.
And again, Michael Clarke Duncan, explain who he was, just for those who may not.
Academy Award nominated for The Green Mile.
Right.
He
Huge.
plays the inmate, the larger-than-life simpleton, I believe he was, his character.
Magical simpleton.
Magical simpleton. Tom Hanks, Sam Rockwell, brilliant.
Also in the Mission Impossible? No, that wasn't him. That was Ving Rhames.
That was Ving Rhames.
Sorry. That was racist of me.
Way to show your true colors, pun intended.
Big black guys for 500, please.
That's right.
Although Michael DeBar, in Michael Clarke Duncan's last TV show, he had a fight scene with Michael Clarke Duncan, and he was bruised to shit the day after his Michael Clarke Duncan fight scene.
So on the set of Whole 9 Yards, night shoot, knock on the door. We're ready for you, Mr. Pollak. And it's a pimply-faced kid from The Simpsons. And I come out of the trailer, and I'm handed an envelope with my per diem. Per diem, those of you listening, is in a movie set situation, is your allowance. You get a weekly allowance of cash, usually, sometimes a check. But it's to be spent on whatever frivolous items you may need, because they're putting you in a hotel, they've traveled you, that you're getting a lot of your meals from work. But here's an allowance, and it's negotiated. And it was always, and to this day, funny to me when multi-millionaire, big-time movie stars, not me, who make tens of millions of dollars, would get so excited about $600 in cash in an envelope.
There's something about cash.
Yeah, because you don't see your money.
Right.
You never see your money.
Right.
The money comes in a check form. It goes to the business manager, gets invested or to pay bills. You never see it. It never sits in your hand, and it's certainly never cash in an envelope. Not these days. So in my case, it was probably $300, and in Bruce Willis's case, was on the movie, it was probably $600,000 in cash. But the point is, sign for your per diem, Mr. Pollak. He hands me the envelope, and I'm signing it, and I hear from behind me the voice of Michael Clarke Duncan, who has a trailer next to mine, and says, "Where's my per diem?" Very low voice. My sphincter tightens instantly, as it did every time he spoke. I turn back, and I laugh, and I go, yeah. And I say to the PA, "Where is Mike's per diem?" "Oh, sorry, Mr. Duncan. All they gave me was this one envelope with Mr. Pollak's name on it. I'm sure we have yours back at the production office." "Yeah, geez, sorry, Mike." And then Michael Clarke Duncan says something that changes the situation, which is, "Well, how do we know that's not my per diem and you put his name on it by accident?" Now, I turn back laughing like that, thinking he's kidding, of course, and that's a really funny thing to say. And I look at a man who is dead serious. And he is not kidding. And if he's not kidding, which he instantly I knew he wasn't, that means we've just entered Crazy Town.
Right. I'm being robbed by a castmate now.
Yeah. Well, he's just saying to this PA, this poor PA who shits himself instantly, "How do we know that's not my per diem and you put his name on the envelope by accident?" And the PA freezes, also probably looking for the laughs. They don't come. And then he says, sorry, Mr. Duncan. I'll check with the office immediately. It just says Mr. Pollak's name on it." And I say, Mike, let him go back to the production office and figure it out. Let's get to set. So we climb into the van. They take us to set. And I look around, and instantly you know whether they're actually ready for you to go to your mark in the scene and start shooting, or they're not. And if they're not, they brought you a couple minutes early. You go sit in the chairs. I go over to the chairs. And there's the stars of the movie, Bruce Willis and Matthew Perry, who at that point we've been shooting a long time and I'm friends with. Michael Clarke Duncan does not sit with us. He's sitting by himself someplace else.
Affording you the opportunity to mention this incident to them.
Interestingly, I do not mention the story.
Oh.
It's still churning in my head as to what the fuck just happened. And was he serious? Did he play it straight to tighten that kid's sphincter? And I didn't get the joke, so I'm not telling anyone.
I see.
We're in the chair 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, waiting to be brought to set. That's too long to keep John McClane, a.k.a. Bruce Willis, waiting. So John McClane turns to his major domo, his right-hand man, Stephen Eads, of, at this point, 40 years. Back then, how many years? I don't know. They were bartenders in New York together. And when Bruce started to hit, he had a conversation with Steve and said, do you want to be my right-hand man? And look out for me. And so it's always tickled me that his major domo has been and was his best friend. And clearly has done exceptionally well for himself, being the head of that world. So
I feel like I could have been that for Pollak.
You could have. I just needed to make more money to afford it. So he turns to
So
Steve.
he shits his pants when
Yeah.
Michael Clarke Duncan.
Bruce turns to Steve. I think maybe tapped his watch or looked at his watch and says, "What the fuck, Steve?" And Stevie turns to the nearest PA or AD and taps his watch and says, "Yeah, what the fuck, man?" That PA shits himself, runs off to find out what the fuck, comes back with the director, Jonathan Lynn, British guy, did My Cousin Vinny, several movies, who says, right, sorry, fellas, bit of a delay, yeah? It seems that Michael Clarke Duncan does not want to shoot. He's in a bit of a fit. Kevin, you might know something about this. Yeah. And everyone looks at me. And then...
like you're the reason.
And then Jonathan says, well, apparently Michael doesn't want to shoot because, Kevin, you stole his per diem? Now, it's funny sounding, but no one's laughing.
Right.
And because I hadn't told Bruce and Matthew the story, Matthew jumps out of his chair, who's hilarious, and says, why would you steal his per diem? You could have had mine. Did you have a death wish? Then I tell everyone the story. I tell them the exact moments, the exact beats of what went down back at base camp. And Bruce is instantly furious and says, I'm going to set the fucker on fire. He's pissed. And I said, no, hold on. Let me go talk to him. I mean, I was there. I don't know what he's worked himself up to and why you, Jonathan, the director, have been told that I stole his per diem. Maybe he's convinced himself of that. Maybe not. I don't know. But I am the only one, other than that poor PA back at base camp. So
he's off cleaning his ass.
Yeah, certainly changing his wardrobe. So I go over to Mike on the other side of the set where he's sitting alone. He sees me coming. He turns away, body language turns away from the direction that I'm walking towards him. And that adds to my, oh boy, this is not going to be great. And I walk up and I say, hey, Mike, listen, sorry about the misunderstanding with the and before I can finish a sentence, he says, you ought to think twice before taking a man's per diem. And then I realized, with the seriousness of his demeanor and expression, that we're no longer in Crazy Town, but I'm rather meeting the mayor of Crazy Town. This guy is fucking bananas. And so in that moment, it's one of those fight or flight opportunities. Which would you rather? And so, like talking to a drunk, maybe, I say, right, yeah, tell you what, I'll have him scratch my name off that envelope and write your name on it, put it in your trailer. Let's go to work. Let's shoot the scene. And if you're getting more per diem than me, I'll make sure they add to it. Does that make things right? And clearly you want your per diem, and I don't blame you. Everybody wants their per diem. So let's do that. And then he just sort of, and I walk away and we go back to work and we shoot the scene. And this is a not great part, but it's true. Cut to, year and a half later, sitting on a beach in Hawaii. Have my cell phone nearby because I can't ever really disconnect from the mothership. It rings, caller ID, it's Bruce Willis, who I had known since 1992 when we shot A Few Good Men, and he was married to Demi Moore. he was shooting Death Becomes Her on the soundstage next to ours. So, in fact, he was loitering on our set all the time to visit his wife, and we started to become friendly then in 92. I don't know what your whole 9 yards was, but it was certainly many years later, and we'd known each other quite well.
Sure.
But he's not a guy who phones. So it was kind of a big deal that Bruce Willis was calling. So I answered the phone. Hey, Bruce. Hey, man, how's it going? Great. I catch you at a bad time? No. Fine. You know, my then wife staring daggers at me. What the fuck are you doing? What's going on, Bruce? Oh, I just want you to know it's official. We're doing the sequel, Whole 10 Yards. Wow, man. You kidding? Because I know. I'm thinking there's nothing like sequel money.
Yeah, that's
This
the
is
best money
fantastic.
there is, right?
So I say, Bruce, that's amazing. I don't know if you remember, but my character kind of got killed in the first one. So are you calling to rub it in that you're doing a sequel? Why are you calling? And he said, no, you're going to come back as your character's father, Laszlo Gogol. Like, we're going to put you in prosthetics makeup. You're going to be an 80-year-old Hungarian mobster. It's going to be a blast. Now my head's on fire with happiness. Oh, my God, that sounds great. And I'm thinking of a character that I can do with the big Lou Wasserman glasses.
Peter Falk
I'm
without
already
the eye.
getting it. I'm already getting ahead. I'm so excited. And I say, that's incredible, man. Fuck, that's great. Is everyone coming back? And he says, yeah, everyone's coming back, except for Michael Clarke Duncan. That son of a bitch can suck my dick. And that's a quote.
Wow.
So that's the story that's in the book. 5 weeks before it's published, I get a call from the publisher. Michael Clarke Duncan has passed away.
His dick-sucking days are over.
You sure you want to keep that story about Michael Clarke Duncan behavior being the reason he wasn't invited back to the sequel? You know, that's implied, if not insisted. Do you want to keep that in there? You know, you portray him as being kind of bananas. And that's when I said, you don't get a pass for dying. Because it happened, and there were witnesses, and it's funny.
And he accused you of stealing.
And he accused me of stealing to my face and to others.
Right,
Told
to
the
the
director.
director.
Oh my God, the whole company. That's a great story. I don't remember from the books. That's really cool. We only have a couple minutes left. So you're doing a project now, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and it's on Amazon.
Yes.
And I saw the pilot, which is, and you had mentioned it to me, and I'd read something about it, and I was expecting a good offering because of what you had said and what I'd read. It pinned the meter. It was unreal. This is a great show. Now, I only saw the pilot, but now the rest of the series is available. How many episodes is that?
The first season is 8 episodes. This show was picked up from pilot to 2 seasons by Amazon. So what they do is they make their pilots, they put them up on the site. People watch them, and they write reviews and things. And based on the response, Amazon, and their own opinion, of course, they decide whether to pick up their own pilots. That's how they do it. Unlike the networks, pilots never see the light of day unless they decide to put them in a series. The audience gets to view, which is why the pilot's been on Amazon now for almost probably a year. We went off and shot the first season last March through July. And I was invited to join the show after the pilot because they realized they needed in-laws. Myself and Caroline Aaron play the cranky Jew in-laws of the lead character, the aforementioned Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
And it's a period thing.
1958.
And everything's done so beautifully. I mean, like, it feels like 1958 in every way.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm going through my phone. You're looking at me wondering, why is he on his phone? We're talking about this very important thing. It's because there are a couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention. Rachel Brosnahan plays the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's the center of the show. She is brilliant beyond belief. I mean, all the reviews are stellar. I've never been one to follow the so-called Rotten Tomatoes, or as I call them, Rotten Tomates, because I don't think I've done anything in the last 10 years since the company was founded that's worthy of getting good reviews on Rotten Tomates.
Well, that certainly can't be true, but all right.
We're 95% with the critics, 96% with the audience.
I mean, that's insane. That's insane.
I assume that's good. And well, I'm told for a television show in particular, they don't usually rank.
I do have to toot my
Please.
adjacent horn, which is Freaks and Geeks just got awarded 100% for all-time trophy this week.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, that's terrific.
Again, when something goes 100% like that, you become like Mount Rushmore, iconic.
But I'm just a producer on Mount Rushmore, so.
Yeah, that's good. Michael Zagan, Alex Bornstein, who you know from doing Lois on Family Guy, she is stealing scenes in the show. Tony Shalhoub, playing the father of the central character, is a revelation. I mean, he's great in everything, but he's so good in this. Maren Hinkle plays his wife, the mother, the matriarch of the family.
I'll tell you something else. I didn't interrupt for a second, but when
Please.
you're watching on Amazon, every time somebody comes into a scene, you can just move your cursor and it gives you who that person is. Now, you can say, well, that's distracting when you're watching. It is, maybe, but there are times when you'll go back and you'll go,
Who was that?
who was that? And then, I mean, everybody, if they're a waiter in the scene, though.
It happens on your television. You know, most smart TVs come with the Amazon option or Blu-ray or however Amazon Fire Stick that I had to buy my mom so she could watch the show. Happy to do it. You know, you watch it on your big screen TV, and some of that information when you pause the show will pop up along the bottom. Yeah. I should mention maybe the most important part of my recommendation to people, other than the fact that I've not been singled out in a New York Times review or even been a part of a New York Times love letter of a review in over 20 years. Amy Sherman Palladino created the show. She of the Gilmore Girls, one of the more revered writing television programs ever, and certainly in my lifetime, to its audience, to the folks that watch the Gilmore Girls. It was one of those religious
totally
experiences. And for me personally as an actor, not since Aaron Sorkin, in terms of the way things are written and difficult for actors to, it's like studying and learning a play because there's so much dialogue. And I'd not been challenged like this in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel as an actor in decades.
And it's dialogue that's really been crafted, so you have to...
Beautifully. And you not only do you have to say it word for word, you want to.
Right.
You want to get it right. You don't... I like to improvise. In fact, there's scenes from The Usual Suspects, lines that people quote back to me all the time that I was allowed to improvise in the moment. You put that together yourself, Einstein? What, do you got a team of monkeys working around the clock? Yeah. You know, Chris McQuarrie, who wrote the screenplay for Suspects and has the Academy Award, wrote I Live in Queens, you know, and makes fun of the guy.
You guys don't have a fucking leg to stand on.
You think so, tough guy? I could put you in Queens on the night of the hijacking.
Really? I live in Queens. Did you put that together yourself, Einstein? What, do you got a team of monkeys working around the clock on this?
I filled in some things that are quoted back to me. In fact, I asked Chris, can you drop the Oscar at my place like 1 week out of 52? 1 week out of 52. You get it 51.
Some of those memorable lines were mine, Chris.
Right. So in the case of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, there's no desire, like A Few Good Men, there's no reason to change. In the case of A Few Good Men, it was a Broadway play, so the theater always about making the words correct and saying them to protect the playwright. I hadn't had that feeling in so many years. In fact, I joke that character actors get a little lazy with memorization because there's not that much to memorize, because if the scene is 3 pages, at the top of the scene, I will say to the star of the film, as me, the character actor, so what do you think we should do? And then the star of the film talks for 3 pages, and then I say, well, if that's what you think. And then we go do it.
All right.
That's usually what I have to memorize. Right. This, I got this 6-page scene, and my character is a blowhard. He doesn't listen. So it was 1/3 of a page, me, 1/2 of an inch, them. 1/3 of a page, me, 1/2 of an inch of dialogue passages. And I had to treat it like a play. And a couple of weeks before we shot, I sat myself down and said, you better spend some time with this. And I'm telling you, I just haven't done that as an actor, because you want to be so perfect with these words.
Sure.
And the experience was phenomenal. So I guess I'm in 4 of the first 8, and I'll be back for season 2. And
so the New York Times mentioned you.
So they did in a love letter.
Why, yes, they did.
So thank you for bringing that back. That just doesn't happen.
No, it's really
cool. We
cool.
like to think that critics don't matter, and I used to joke that I wish they would just give us directions to the actual theater. That would be helpful. Right. Everyone has an opinion, and now with the internet, everyone really has an opinion. So there are just certain periodicals that you'd like to be mentioned in the New York Times being one of them. And they said, among many glowing things about the show. I don't want to, this is a big tagline for them within the review. But out of context, they say, and the Tony Shalhoub and Kevin Pollak's characters bickering with each other is worth the price of admission.
Oh, wow, that's
nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. And Tony Shalhoub is so great in this show.
Yeah, you're jamming with a great band.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, but the Rachel, the star of the show, she's a phenom. She's a true phenom, and big important periodicals are writing about her right now. And fortunate for the show, I think, is the importance of empowering women. So the show is created by a woman, it stars a woman, the main character is a woman, and also it's a story about this woman at age 26 or whatever with a couple of kids whose life is suddenly turned on its ear, and she must be empowered, must find a way to empower herself, so on and so forth. But it's a beautifully shot, a period piece. New York involves this down in the village, right? Little club, the Gaslight.
Yeah, it's comedy. There's a lot of kind of cool...
I don't want to give too much away, but because it has kind of a weird twist in the first episode.
Yeah, no, I'm not, but
there's a Lenny Bruce character.
Right. And the comedy part comes in right away because that's what her husband is involved in doing. But yeah, it's really great. Congratulations. So you're in the 2 seasons that they're doing.
Yeah, they greenlit 2 seasons. I'm in the first one, which just dropped the end of November, so it's only a few days fresh. You know, I don't push for most things I'm in. I'm happy to be in them. I recommend on occasion. This is the first thing I've really sort of going out of my way to make sure people know about in a long time. It's just beautifully made. And now, you know, we're so inundated with too much content. You can't keep up. You can't keep track. Every day there's a billboard for a show you've never even heard of and said, Emmy nominated. I've never even heard of this show. Exactly. So I understand that you've got a lot in your queue that you haven't got to yet. And I say that to the listeners. Just put it on the list. That's all I ask.
It's a winner. I saw the pilot. I didn't realize it's out.
Maisel Tov, if you will.
Thank you.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's called. Kevin Pollak, we have to let you go. I love having you here. I love a couple of stories that are all-time. Well, one of them has never been told anywhere publicly.
And I'm sorry it seemed as...
It didn't seem quaint. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, it's not...
Compared to the stories out
environment.
Now.
Yeah. No. That story...
I carried it with me, Mark, since 1994.
You're free now.
This dark moment. And so Gabriel Byrne was quoted as just saying production shut down because of Kevin's antics. And I've been sent links. So I don't know that he went into detail. And so it does feel weird after all this time to talk about it at all. So I will just thank you for the opportunity. Because I would tell people the story as a way to point out how Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze, right? Almost half kidding in saying that. It's comical sounding, not knowing at all that he was what he's now being accused of.
Right, like really monstrous stuff, even beyond the
federal
monstrous
offense.
stuff. Right.
Yeah, what happened on the set was not a federal prison sentence. It was just a heinous betrayal.
Yes. Kevin,
pleasure to see you.
Great seeing you. Thank you for being here. And I'll continue to dutifully and excitedly watch all of your projects. And Kevin Pollak Chat Show is a weekly offering. And The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is something I look forward to seeing on Amazon. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, pal. I'll see you, I think, at your birthday dinner.
Oh, I'm going to have a big birthday. No, it's actually not a big birthday dinner.
No, I think it's just us.
Just us. So sorry, audience, but thanks, Kevin. Kevin Pollak, everybody. Love it.
Please be seated.
Love it.
Oh, okay. Let me just, It's just something. There we go. Yeah. I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, shit, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.